So let's bring in Democratic Congressman Khanna, who represents Silicon Valley and voted against the TikTok bill. First of all, Congressman, welcome this morning, but I also want to ask you why you voted against it. I know you've said First Amendment concerns.
Martha, look, there are two national security issues that proponents of the bill have cited. Both are legitimate. One, will the data get to a foreign government, in this case, the Chinese Communist Party? Two, will the Chinese Communist Party have an influence on algorithms? We can deal with both with a narrowly tailored law. Let's ban any data going to a foreign country and protect American data. Second, let's ban any foreign interference in a social media app, whether that's TikTok or another app. And by the way, those laws would also cover data brokers, which are selling data to Chinese companies. So this bill is not actually addressing the issue. 71% of Americans want to protect data privacy. Only 31% want to ban on TikTok. Congress, A, doesn't understand, in my view, all of the social media and how it's working, and B, is out of touch with what the American people want.
How do you do that? Get more specific about what you say, banning. What does that all mean, and how does that work? We don't always know what's going over there or what's being taken.
Martha, I think some of the facts would be helpful. So TikTok is owned by ByteDance. ByteDance is a Chinese company. It has 60% international investors, including KKR and General Atlantic. 3 of the 5 board members are Americans. They have data that currently Oracle is managing in Texas. As you mentioned earlier to Congressman Turner, there have been reports in some cases that that data has leaked and had access to people in China. No evidence publicly that the Chinese Communist Party has had it, but there has been evidence that they could have it in Chinese nationals. So pass a law, one, to prevent these apps, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or YouTube, for collecting data. That bill has been sitting in the House Commerce Committee for years, and it doesn't move. Second, pass a law that if there's any evidence that the data goes to China, then Oracle and TikTok would be held liable, civilly or criminally. Third, pass a law that if Chinese nationals are involved in the algorithms, people are claiming these algorithms are manipulating Americans. If there's any information, insight, evidence that a Chinese national or any foreign national is manipulating algorithms, that would be illegal.
And Congressman, I want to go back to the current bill. And and your First Amendment concerns, what are those? I mean, if ByteDance divests, the app could continue to function in the U.S. So what is the First Amendment concern that you have cited?
Well, if the bill was a just divestment bill, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I mean, what the first role the government should have done is pass the privacy laws I'm talking about, and had perhaps facilitated these American investors to having a spin-off and having TikTok be U.S. owned. We didn't do that. The two First Amendment concerns relate to the ban, which is the second part of the legislation. The court has said that you have to have the least restrictive approach when you have a compelling speech interest. Here you have a speech interest of 170 million Americans. I showed several less restrictive approaches than a ban. The court has also said you need alternative means of communication with a group on TikTok. Now, you asked Congressman Turner, you said, well, what about these 170 million? Many of these people, 224,000, have a livelihood. How are they going to communicate with the TikTok audience? And if you say, well, they could just go on some other social media app, well, those members of Congress haven't talked to the TikTok influencer creators, because that's not how it works. The audience is very different.
You don't think that's possible?
I think it would be I think it would be hard, and I don't think the Supreme Court would look at the audience and say, okay, you can just have people go onto a different app. But I certainly don't think it's least restrictive. And the point is, there's been no evidence right now. You'd have to have a compelling interest. What is the actual evidence that you couldn't just pass a data privacy law or a law banning data going to a foreign country and get that done that way? And the frustration is that we haven't haven't been able to pass these data privacy laws. I mean, it took 3 days to pass a sale and then, if not ban, on TikTok, and we haven't passed data privacy. We haven't passed laws to ban foreign interference. The app where there actually was foreign interference in my district or near my district was Facebook. We aren't tackling those issues, and then we've just passed this blanket TikTok.
Congressman, this passed overwhelmingly. Your other members of Congress must have heard something that alarmed them. Nothing alarmed you enough to want to pass this urgently.
No, it did. It did concern me, the data privacy. I passed.
I mean, what you're talking about would take a very long time.
No, I actually think it would be easier once we pass it. If we passed a law saying you can't transfer data, you can't collect data, that would actually solve the problem. And by the way, there's so many data brokers who are sending information to China. This law does nothing to them. It does nothing in terms of other social media apps that are collecting data and maybe transferring data. And now one of the concerns that people were citing is, well, there's a lot of folks who have pro-Palestine viewpoints on TikTok. Well, there are pro-Palestine viewpoints on Instagram and Facebook, and all it takes is to go to a college campus and realize that that demographic has more sympathy to the innocent loss of life in Gaza. I'm not saying they're right, but that doesn't mean that that's evidence of manipulation.